For the best part of a fortnight, much of the world has been asking one question: where is the Princess of Wales, and why has she not been seen in public for a few months? Well, yesterday, a video was released by The Sun showing Prince William and Kate strolling through a farm shop near their Windsor home. And yet the conspiracies continue. So how much damage has it all done to the royal family? I'm joined here in the studio by Tina Brown, former editor of Vanity Fair and the Sunday Times best-selling author of The Palace Papers. Tina, and of course you are much of the time in New York. How different is this story being told to an American audience as compared to here? Because you've got...
Well, it's febrile and it's out of control, you know, because it's conspiracy theories galore. Actually, a great sort of a final, I think, transition of the royals being the royalty from being a kind of respected institution to being simply a kind of wild, you know, Kardashian episode. I definitely think there is a sort of loss of stature that's accrued to all of this because it all feels silly and scandalous, and there's a real feeling that, you know, the palace is no longer a kind of institution of great renown.
Yes, and let's be frank, the last month or so has been a comms disaster.
Absolute comms disaster. And I do think it's more cock-up than it is conspiracy. Mm-hmm. I think a perfect storm of disasters hit the royal all at once, you know, the king being ill, all of it. And at the same time as a kind of transfer of staff was going on. And so a kind of chaos took over because it really took an expert comms person to sort of handle that sort of portfolio of sort of horror show. And yet it hasn't been handled well.
And there was no way of coming back from the doctored photo, was there? There
really wasn't. I mean, the doctored photo, somehow it just amped it all up beyond belief because for so many reasons. I mean, for a start, the stories that came out afterwards were just as ridiculous as the original picture. Like, oh, William took this picture in a rush on a Friday afternoon. Excuse me, you know, the palace has this thing called the grid, and all of these people sit around and go, oh, it's January the 1st. Let's what's happening about the Mother's Day picture this year? When is that going to be taken? You know, the notion that kind of people scurry around, you know, doing things at the last minute is just not the way the palace works. So that seemed ridiculous. And the picture was just a jigsaw of bits stuck together, which is why they couldn't release the original picture.
Absolutely. And that then fed all these conspiracy theories about how ill is Kate? Is there some problem in the marriage? What's going on here? And that got more and more intense to the point where the palace had to kind of do a deal with their main tormentors, including the Sun newspaper here, to release pictures of the two of them walking in Windsor.
Yeah, but here's the thing. They did not have to do a deal. I mean, when the Queen had, honestly, you know, bone cancer in the last months of her life, I mean, she was doing Zooms. She was doing carefully crafted sort of public appearances. You know, when you're very ill and feeling really terrible, you can still do things. I mean, why have that picture be the one released? Why not just simply have Kate do a Zoom for a minute, you know, 50 seconds and saying, everyone's asking where I am. I'm fine. I said I was going to recuperate. I am. Happy Mother's Day to the world or whatever. I don't understand the idea that it all has to be this kind of cloak and dagger, a sort of mishmash, quite honestly.
Yes, too clever by half.
Yeah.
And the palace have put so much emphasis on Kate as the answer to the royal family in the future, particularly when the king is ill and all the rest of it. That now looks a bit of a foolish strategy.
I think it's enormously stressful. I mean, I think no wonder she needs a few months to recuperate. You know, if your job is to be perfect all the time, look absolutely radiant all the time, never put a foot wrong. It is so stressful. I can't imagine anybody really being able to stand it. And I do think it sort of rather begs the question, maybe this institution is just too cruel for humans. You know, I mean, it's become
I think that's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah.
And of course, once you, as it were, invite the tabloids in, it's very, very hard to then get on your high horse and be uppity about intrusion. If you invite them in, you invite them in, and that's that.
Absolutely, but I don't think that it was an either or. They could easily have released a couple of pictures. I mean, take a picture of Kate in bed with the 3 children and a quilt over her, laughing and saying, I'm feeling terrible. You know, there's so many things you could have staged, honestly, and they just don't seem to be willing to just simply ameliorate the situation now by just doing a decent picture or having a Zoom and saying a couple of words to the public.
We're waiting for an interview to be released from a place I cannot mention involving Donald Trump. And it's suggested that Donald Trump has been getting more and more involved in the Harry side of this story.
Yes. Well, I mean, you know, look, Donald Trump was going to throw out any sort of insane, sort of pass-through publicity-seeking moment that comes into his head. I don't think he can do a darn thing to Prince Harry. He's sitting there in Montecito. I think everything is finally worked out. So I think that he's just, getting in on the act for no reason whatever.
So do you think overall the palace is going to be concerned about this moment in the story? I mean, they're short of people, they're short of warm bodies, and they're short of affection in the public prince.
I think they should be concerned. I mean, they have got to have a massive reboot now with a head of comms. In the era of 2012, when everything went well, it was because they had Paddy Harverson, who was an extremely a competent person in the comms area. He'd actually been comms person for Manchester United. And they had Miguel Head, who was really great. These people knew what they were doing. I don't know what's going on now, but you need a really good comms head. The problem is it's not a great job for the great comms people because they have very little freedom. They have all of these grey beards.
And there's always another explosion ahead.
There's always another explosion, exactly. Your iPhone is always blowing up with some fresh, ghastly, made-up revelation.
Yeah, well, neither of us are applying for it or appealing for it.
Certainly not.
Thank you so much for coming in and talking to me.
All right, thank you.